there's a very fine line between arrogance and confidence. Yeah, okay, let's not ever forget that. Nobody wants to work with an arrogant person. But if you're confident and you give out that air of confidence, people want to work with you because they want to be in your world. They trust you.
Welcome back to the Beige Moguls show. Today I have a very special friend of mine, Andrew D. Bernstein. He is a legendary Hall of Famer sports photographer and all-around great. He has covered over 40 NBA Finals and 38 All-Star games, capturing some of the most iconic photos going back to the Showtime Lakers and even this photo that's on my t-shirt. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Great to be here, man.
For those that don't know, why don't you, I did quite the introduction, but tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, it's been a crazy journey, and it's been a great journey and gratifying. 45 years I've, been a professional sports photographer. I set that goal very young. I was in school at University of Massachusetts, knowing that I wanted to be a photojournalist in some way, and I gravitated to news photography because we had a great daily newspaper at UMass. It was a lot of fun, learned a lot on the fly, but I didn't learn enough to really think that I could make a career out of it. So I took a leap of faith, and a lot of us, talk about leaps of faith and risking whatever it takes to achieve the goal that we really want. And I had the goal to be a professional photojournalist in some way. That sort of coalesced into being a sports photographer, because once I got to LA and I enrolled at Art Center, College of Design, Pasadena, I was introduced by a couple of teachers of mine to some Sports Illustrated photographers who took me under their wing. And I really, really saw how these guys functioned day to day, how they dealt with every challenge and every assignment that came up, the business of really becoming a top-notch sports photographer, what that involved. I was in the right place at the right time, and I was very fortunate to be in LA. I went to LA in '78. I was 19 years old. I started assisting, like I said, and that was when, Showtime started taking off in the early '80s, and I learned this incredible technique of how to light indoor arenas with strobe photography, four-strobe photography. It was a very niche kind of thing to do because Sports Illustrated was really the only entity doing it. It was expensive, involved a lot of man hours, but that's how this exquisite photography, besides the talent of the photographers, but this is how the exquisite photography that we all became fascinated with and wanted to aspire to at Sports Illustrated. That's how I learned it. So that's really how it all started, my friend, and things morphed from there and grew. I became the Dodgers team photographer in 1984, and I don't talk about that a lot, but I was with them for 11 years as their chief photographer. As my NBA career was growing, and my overall photography business was growing, so the LA King been a long-time client of mine for over 40 years. I became the director of photography for A&G, so A&G manages everything from Crypto.com Arena and Peacock Theater, all of LA Live. My group and I have been doing that for 25 years. So I like to talk a lot about longevity, about why the clients keep coming back, when they could probably have a lot younger photographers out there. But I'm grateful for that, and I have a great crew, great people that work with me day in and day out, that we produce the photography that the clients expect. So that's, at the end of the day, I'm happy about that. And I'm happy that I can kind of pass that on now to the next generation.
Absolutely. I mean, you built quite the reputation for yourself, and I'm sure it wasn't as straight path as a lot may assume for it to be, right? You literally started off as an assistant photographer and worked your way up. I feel like so many people in a similar position would just become complacent or just fall short. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced along the way?
Well, the biggest challenge was that I chose to go to Art Center, College of Design, which is still, I think, the #1 commercial art photography school in the country. I mean, it's all of visual arts, you know, not just photography, but photography happens in the biggest department. It's a BFA program. And from day one, literally day one, I was told that I was in the wrong school. Like, why are you here? You want to be a photojournalist? You want to shoot sports? We don't teach that here. This is not what we're about. We're about opening a studio like this, you know, where we're sitting today, shooting fashion, shooting commercial work, doing cars, doing food. You know, photojournalism way down on the totem pole of the, is like the poor stepchild of photography in general. And then sports photography was like the poor stepchild of photojournalism.
Right.
But, you know, you tell me that at 19, 20 years old, being a Brooklyn guy, and that's just going to fuel me more. That's going to be like, all right, I'll show you. Right. And I literally thought that was my thought process. I knew I had to play the game. You know, it was important to me and my parents at the time for me to get a degree. So I did. And that's benefited me actually now later in my life that I'm able to teach because I have a degree. So I'm thankful I did that. But that was the biggest hurdle from literally day one. Kind of the naysayers and the sort of putting me down and lack of encouragement, let's just say. But I did have these two teachers that believed in me from the beginning. And they are still mentors of mine. We're talking 45, 6, 7 years later. I still have mentors in my life that, you know, was so vital to me then and still are now. And I'm trying to bring that to the next generation as a mentor, as somebody that they can come to try to help steer their career in that direction.
Absolutely, and I'd love to dive a little bit more deeper into that shortly here, but let's talk a little bit about your legendary photography career. I mean, you've taken some of the most iconic sports photography images known to mankind. So what are your, let's say, your top three?
Well, you're wearing one of them. This was a great moment with the Mamba himself, the 2001 championship, you know, three-peat Philadelphia, kind of followed him into the shower. I mean, he's literally sitting in the shower because he wanted some alone time with the trophy. And myself and two other NBA photographers, we were like trying to find it. Well, first we were trying to find the trophy. Then we were trying to find Kobe. And we just kind of went through the maze of the back of the house there in the locker room, and there he was. And it's such a poignant moment, a moment of reflection, a moment I know that was very deep and important to him. But you know, there's been some good, you know, greatest hits along the way. You know, Michael Jordan holding the trophy in '91 with his dad next to him, and Mike was crying. Magic and Bird intertwined. That sort of David Stern always said that helped to sort of sum up the era of the Bird Magic era. You know, LeBron's crazy scissor dunk that he had, Kobe sitting in ice and black and white. You know, there's a bunch, so but I'm very proud of that.
Wow, those were some iconic images, Andy, and I'm sure there are so many more. What do you feel like has helped you build such close, I would almost say, you know, brotherhoods with legends like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James?
I think part of that is my personality, that I've prided myself in never making it about me in the moment. So one of my fortes is literally being a fly on the wall. You know, if I'm a distraction, then I'm not doing the job I'm set there to do. So I just do my thing. I get in, I get out. I know how to read people really well. You know, Phil Jackson used to have an eyebrow that when he'd see me in the locker room or the training room and I saw that eyebrow go up, I knew it was time to get out. Pat Riley tried to keep me out of his huddle for game after game after game until he finally let me in, and I proved myself. And, you know, my business, and probably every business, but in professional sports, you know, you really only get one chance to prove yourself, because if you give them any reason to doubt your integrity or trust is the overriding factor in my work. You're not going to get a second opportunity. You know, no one's going to give you that chance to sort of make amends and come back. I work for the league. I work for the teams. I'm not there to get a gotcha moment. I'm not there to make somebody look bad, right? And yes, part of my job is the agony of defeat. I have to document one team wins a final, one team loses a finals, right? I have to document the other side of the coin, but I don't have to do it in a way that is negative. It's more in a journalistic way, right? So they all know that. They, meaning teams and the league itself and the players, they know that they see Andy, they know that I'm a friendly face. I'm not there to find something that's going to end up, a TMZ or whatever. So that's helped me, but I had to work for that. I had to earn that, and I continued enough to earn that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, trust in business is everything, right? Integrity, and the fact that you built trust with some of the most legendary names. I mean, that's inspiring for sure. So let's talk a little bit more about, the present moment, right? And, you've had, 4.5 decades of being this legendary sports photographer. You've authored several books. You've mentored so many photographers. Tell us more about Legends of Sport.
I've had a wonderful career, great career. I'm very, very proud of, and a career, by the way, that's still going on with my photography life. I have a great group that I work with, that works with me. We cover a lot of things. We're responsible for everything that happens at LA Live, the two buildings, concerts, Grammys, all the sporting events, anything that happens. So I kind of oversee that, but the photographers I have that work for me are pretty self-sufficient, and they're really good, and they're an extension of me. So I have to be confident that I send somebody to shoot a concert or to shoot a meet and greet, or the president of AEG shows up or whatever, that they're going to get the same service from this person as they would have got from me, the same quality. I need constantly, as a creative person, to have my creative juices kind of stimulating, let's just say. I love what I do. I love covering NBA games. I love the fact that the NBA puts me in a position to be the guy that gets LeBron breaking Kareem's record, or to be the guy that, will get the final shot of an NBA Finals or whatever it might be, or be with the USA team. I can't do it forever, right? I mean, physically it's difficult. It's more challenging now physically than it's ever been, the travels especially. The NBA has been unbelievably gracious with letting me sort of back up a little bit and do less games, not travel as much. So a number of years ago, I was noticing, as we all have, that certain iconic athletes, not just NBA players, but iconic athletes, had fallen on hard times. It's no secret that many retired athletes in the previous generations didn't make the big money, became broke. They had serious financial problems. They had addiction problems. They had problems with child support. They had all kinds of problems. And I was noticing that these athletes, these former athletes that I adored, loved, covered, and everything else, were having tough times. And I wanted to see if there was a way to help them and sort of point the spotlight back on them for a little bit, and then help them sort of monetize their iconic careers in some way, shape, or form. And also be a bridge to the younger generation, your generation, who might not have ever seen Michael Jordan play, or might not have seen Kirk Gibson's home run, or even been alive when it happened. But that's important because sports is such a legacy. So concurrently with that, I have two very close friends also in the sports licensing and sports legal sort of world. Probably my two best friends, and around my age. And we just came up with this idea about how can we do something in sports together, the three of us, work together, give back in sports, not really have to work for anybody anymore. Everybody works for somebody. But the fact that we can give back with these legendary athletes, and then we expanded that into well, what about legendary teams? You know, I grew up a '69 Mets fan. I was 11 years old when the Mets won the World Series. Greatest thing that ever happened in my neighborhood, right? I don't know anybody who could name the entire roster of the '69 Mets. I can't even name it, right? But when my kids were young and I wanted to teach them about the '69 Mets, just like my dad wanted to teach me about the Brooklyn Dodgers and Ebbets Field, I had no resource for that. Even with Google, you go to Google, go page after page, you're going to get a little snip here of a bio, you're going to get a video, you're going to get some stats, you're going to get an interview, but there's no central place for anyone to go that is basically, without mincing words, with like one-stop shopping in everything legendary in sports. So Steph Curry hits 9 3-pointers tonight. We're not going to report on that or the score of the game, but we're going to relate that to when Reggie Miller might have done that, or maybe Ray Allen did that, or somebody hits 3 home runs in a baseball game. Yeah, let's talk about when Reggie Jackson did that, or in a World Series, or whatever it is. So we bridge legendary moments, teams, athletes, venues, and personalities with this new generation of sports fans. And also, by the way, my generation, who still wants to honor those mostly athletes, but also venues and places that no longer exist. So it's fun and it's challenging and it's creatively inspiring for me to be building this platform from the ground up. You know, we started with the podcast, Legends of Sport, which I host. I've been hosting it for 6 years. We have over 200 episodes. Every conversation to me is mind-blowing because everybody has a story. Doesn't matter who you are, you had to come from somewhere. Somebody had to help you along the way. You have lessons that you're willing and things you want to teach the world, and I helped to uncover that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. So what are some of the other mediums, in addition to the podcast, that Legends of Sport is expanding to?
You know, imagine you're a Showtime Laker fan, and you get to go to an event where you have 4 or 5 Showtime Lakers, and you get to meet them and mingle with them, and then you get to sit down and hear a roundtable discussion with them that's led by some, a great moderator, somebody like Jim Gray, Neil Everett. So maybe they'll involve my photography or someone else's photography. I have a dear friend, Michael Zagaris, who's been a long-time San Francisco 49ers photographer, going back to, Bill Walsh and Montana, Steve Young, like Jerry Rice. People want to be in that presence of greatness again. And then, by the way, it helps the athletes too, because like I said earlier, the spotlight moves back to them a little bit. They're able to monetize their greatness again. They're relevant again.
What was your relationship like with Kobe?
Well, it was a great relationship. I met him when he was 18 years old. I mean, he just turned 18. Wow. And I didn't really know anything about him. I read the hype, of course, but here I am at Lakers Media Day 1996, and this young kid comes onto my set, very much like this background behind us. And my job for the NBA is to take some headshots, first and foremost, that are used for everything, then do some sort of mock action stuff. And he comes on my set during Media Day, and like any new player, a player I hadn't met before, a traded player, what have you, I go in, before I pick up the camera, I go in, I introduce myself, and I say, hey, Kobe, I'm Andy Bernstein, I'm your team photographer. And the kid looks me right in the eye, and he says, well, I know who you are, man. And I just had to take a second because I thought it was a very smart-ass comment, actually. I mean, he's 18, I'm 38, like I'm kind of an elder, at that point. And I looked at him and I said, I don't know how that's possible, man, because we never met before. He goes, yeah, but I had all your posters in my ring growing up. So if you really drill into that, and I don't want to get too deep, really, but nobody on the planet looks at photo credits on a poster because A, you can't really find them. They're the most minuscule type, the bottom of a poster, like non-existent. And the only people who really ever look at the photo credit are other photographers, because I'm jealous that you got a poster that I didn't get, or vice versa. Yeah. So the fact that he studied every ink drop, every inch, every whatever of that poster, not just the photo, but the photo credit really, yeah. And so that relationship really started that day and just grew, and he trusted me and allowed me into his inner circle. And I was there for every monumental moment, every championship, MVP, whatever. Until 20 years later, we did this book together, which is really a compilation of some of my best photography of him, but it's him in his own words describing what the Mamba mentality meant to him and what being the Black Mamba meant to him. Kobe had a very small inner circle of people that he 100% trusted.
Yeah.
I think that he was not a trustworthy person, or mistrusting people, but he just wanted to have this close-knit circle, which I felt very fortunate to be included in. Yeah. So all of his private workouts and behind-the-scenes stuff with his family, and as he became a father, and all that stuff that I was very privy to, but so grateful that he allowed me in. It just lives right here in my heart, because we don't have it anymore to share that with and to grow with. And now the book, the Mamba Mentality book, has really become his legacy. That I have the good fortune, really, and I'm grateful for the fact that I can carry his legacy forward through our book. So I speak a lot to groups. I mean, it could be executive groups, could be kids, it could be a Rotary Club, doesn't matter, about what did the Mamba mentality mean to him, and then how can we take the tenets of the Mamba mentality, the pillars, and bring it into our work life, or our relationship with our kids, or our church group, or our little league, or whatever it is. Doesn't matter. I've spoken to executives and moms and little kids. They all get it. They all understand. Like, it's pretty simple. The Mamba mentality is 4 pillars. First one is obsession. You got to be obsessed with what you do. Second one is curiosity. Always be curious about your craft. And then find people who can help you kind of understand more about your craft. Mentors, or people that you really admire in your business, in your craft. Relentlessness. It's just a relentless pursuit of greatness. Never stopping at a level that you think is your potential. Pau Gasol credits Kobe for getting him into the Hall of Fame, winning 2 championships together, because Kobe pushed him to a level he didn't even know he could attain as a player, mentally and as skill set. And then the 4th pillar is really a culmination of all 3. The other ones was that strength, being able to overcome adversity. If you're an athlete, injury. Here's a guy in the 16th season, blew out his Achilles. Most people at that point in their career, 5 championships, MVPs, a lot of money in the bank, would say, you know what, this injury is telling me something, or I can't come back from this. He did the exact opposite. He said, I'm going to grieve for about 30 seconds that I got hurt, and now I'm going to go back to work and get back on the court. And guess what? I'm going to be better than I was before I got injured. And what did he do? In his 20th season, last game, scored 60 points, dropped the mic, Mamba out, and he walked off the court on his own volition. We all can take a lot from those tenets, from those pillars. And that's what the book really drills into in depth, and all from his words illustrated with my photos.
That's amazing. Yeah. I got to get a copy of that for sure. Wow. Andy, what's your definition of a mogul?
I see that as meaning somebody who's lived a lot, experienced a lot, has overcome a lot, has learned from mistakes and moved forward to get to a level that I never thought it was possible. We talk about Kobe and the relentless pursuit of greatness. I never thought I would be a Hall of Famer. I never thought I would take some of the most iconic photos in the history of the league, or that I'd be put in the position to do that as a young photographer. So it's a humbling word, actually, mogul, because I feel like that comes with responsibility. So to give back and pass it on. Yeah. Kobe was very much about passing on the craft of basketball, his knowledge of the craft, especially on the women's side. As you know, he was a great mentor to some of the really phenomenal WNBA players and some of the really up-and-coming college players. But he knew that that was going to be the future for 𝐥𝐤𝐤, and he embraced that, right? You know, I want to pass my craft on, and things have changed drastically, you know, since I first started. You know, we've gone from analog to digital. You know, it's a pretty big change. But the craft of sports photography will hopefully remain the same in terms of how your mentality is, your work ethic, your loyalty to your clients, all of that, you know, that big pie that makes a career. So that's what the word mogul means to me.
Based on our conversation and just everything that you've accomplished and are going to continue to accomplish, I would say you're quite the mogul yourself. What's made you the mogul that you are today?
Well, I think not listening to the noise. We all have noise in our head, like a lot of negativity, good angel, bad angel, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And I've been through a lot in my life. You know, I was a single dad for 7 years, raising my 2 kids in a very tumultuous, contentious divorce, custody battle, while I had this like insane career of traveling and pressure and everything else. Just overcoming that and understanding that there's a higher purpose to my work, which is being a father, being able to take care of my kids. And I got remarried. We have a beautiful 15-year-old. And that's all a result of me doing the work, the inner work that it took to get to that point, right? And look, I'm still producing. I hope I'm still producing good photography that people like. The NBA certainly, you know, not pulling the plug on me yet. So I take every game as I had always approached every game. That's something I learned from the greats, starting with Magic, that you just bring the lunch pail every single game. It's the same work ethic. Whether it's, you know, a meaningless game in the preseason or the middle of the season, or an NBA Finals game, or a gold medal game at the Olympics. You know, these guys are the greats. Have always impressed me at how they approach every time they step on the court or the field the same. You know, and I want to do the same thing, because if I don't do that, I'm short-shrifting my client. But at the end of the day, I'm short-shrifting myself, and what I pride myself in the most is my work ethic.
Thank you for sharing that, and thanks for, you know, hopping on and taking the time. My final question for you is, what advice would you have for those watching that might want to pursue that next passion or that next desire?
Well, look, if we're talking about sports photography, you just have to do it. I mean, you have to get out there and shoot and keep shooting. And when you're tired of shooting, guess what? You have to keep shooting some more. And take risks. And, you know, the digital world is so much easier now to be not paying for film. You're not paying to get film processed, not paying for prints. You know, you have endless supply of cards that have memory that you could shoot, you know, for 2 years without, or even having to put a new card in your camera. So I encourage sports photographers to just keep shooting. Find a mentor. You know, this goes back to curiosity. Find somebody whose work you admire. I admire Neil Leifer, one of the greatest sports photographers of all time. I reached out to him, you know, I was 19 or 20 years old. And the next thing I know, Neil's invited me to the apartment, and 47 years later, he's still a mentor. It's just really important that you find people who you can emulate them and their career, pick their brain. There's famous pictures in my book of Kobe Bryant picking Michael Jordan's brain during an All-Star game.
Right.
You know, Michael talked about it at Kobe's memorial, how the kid used to drive him crazy with questions all the time, right? But this is how we grow. So, you know, I would just encourage people that, and it's a cliche, and I know everybody says it, but if you have a passion, you got to follow it. And don't listen to that noise. You got to honor the noise. You got to say, look, I'm hearing this over here, okay? Don't do this. You're not good enough. Get into another line of work. you know, you're never going to make it, you know, blah, 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 blah. The whole reel of things, endless kind of spool of negativity. And you say, okay, I'm hearing that, but you know what, time to go. Get that out of here now. Now I'm going to focus all my energy on reaching that goal.
Focus on what serves you towards taking positive action, right? And I feel like you used a lot of the noise as influence and as fuel, right? To then propel forward and open up the doors.
Well, that's the Brooklyn thing, but that's, and it's hard to get that across to this sort of younger generation, but you have to have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. You have to have a little bit of moxie, a teeny bit of arrogance, and there's a very fine line between arrogance and confidence. Yeah, okay, let's not ever forget that. Nobody wants to work with an arrogant person. I don't care if you're a photographer, if you're a writer, if you're, you know, a doctor or any other, you know, profession. But if you're confident and you give out that air of confidence, people want to work with you because they want to be in your world. They trust you.
Well, Andy, it's been a pleasure. Definitely gonna have a part 2 to this, but thank you so much for popping on the show. For those that want to connect with you, that want to stay in the tune, in the loop of everything Legends of Sport is doing, where can we find you?
Well, my photography always can be found best places on Instagram at ADB Photo Inc. Also, you know, Legends of Sport, we sort of cross-platform a lot with my Instagram. That's at Legends of Sport on Instagram. Our YouTube channel, Legends of Sport. Our website, legendsofsport.net. Everything's about Legends of Sport right now. Follow us, subscribe, tell a friend, leave a good review, because we're growing. And, you know, the future is very, very bright for us, so we're happy.
That's amazing. Well, make sure to connect with Legends of Sport and with Andy himself. Thank you all so much for joining in to this episode of Beige Moguls. This was probably one of my favorite episodes, so appreciate the time and thank you, my friend. Yeah. Until next time.